Hi guys, my name is Myonna and today I'm going to be talking about my July wrap-up. So I read 40 books in July. I also watched 14 TV shows and 4 movies. So if you want to hear about those, then you can check out my Patreon because I talk about things that I watched on Patreon. Okay, I gotta get started fast because I have a lot to talk about and I want to make sure this video isn't too long, so I'm just going to get into the video. If you've never seen a wrap-up of mine before, I usually read a bunch of different genres, so I am going to be talking about the genres in sections. So if you don't read a particular genre, you can just skip over it. I can now say I'm a reader of all genres because I have discovered some new to me genres this month. So yeah, let's just get into the 40 books that I read. Before that, I do want to talk about my DNFs. I have about 7. So the first book I DNF'd is Local Woman Missing. I was reading this book for a vlog and I had already knew the spoiler going into it because I was watching another one of my favorite YouTubers vlog, and she spoiled the book and I still wanted to read it because it sounded so interesting. But when I read the book, it felt like I was reading the same chapters over and over and over again. Like I had to keep making sure that my pages were actually going, the page count was going up, because I felt like I was reading the same chapters over and over and over again. So I just said, you know what, I'm a DNF. I have been a DNF queen this month. I usually don't DNF books that often, but I really was doing my thing this month. So then I read The Vegetarian, and I DNF'd this book simply because it was just boring. You could tell I really was not feeling this book because the book was only like 2 hours long and I could not even sit through it. Like usually me, like I will sit and suffer. I like sit and like just be on Instagram or whatever, but I just could not. All of the books I read this month were listened through audiobook. So I've literally just been sitting in my bed listening to audiobooks all day, scrolling through social media. I was gonna scroll through social media anyways, so it's better to just read audiobooks while I've been doing so. The next one is Amelia Kisses in Your Lifetime. I read this one because of Lachlan, my friend. I'm so sorry. I know she loves this book. I love bully romances, but I feel like maybe they're not my genre anymore, at least not the high school ones, because I started to read this book and I DNF'd it on page 2. So basically I started this book and the main character literally starts off like the girl main character, like she's so loved by everyone. All the girls want to be her. She's a new girl to school. Everyone loves her. Everybody wants to be her. Everybody wants to be friends with her. Unrealistic. Then the main guy, we're in the main guy's head, and he goes on to say, yeah, she's a virgin. She's the only virgin left in our class. Unrealistic. And the fact that even the girls above the grade was obsessed with her and they want to be her, girl, you are not that beautiful. Like, come on now. And it's like she's so sweet and like she's like talking to the girls and she's like, yeah, you should just stay a virgin until then. And the guy, for the main guy's point of view, was misogynistic with the first chapter in. I was like, yeah, no, I'm not doing this. I'm not sitting here reading corny books for just for like, you know, just for like the bully romances. Like I can't, like bully romance authors have to do better at this point, because no. So then I read The Queens Gambit, and I watched this TV show in July and I loved it. I ate it up. This is one of my all-time favorite TV shows. I'm actually about to rewatch it soon. So I decided, well, let me read the book, and I DNF'd it because the main character was sexually assaulted 8% into the book, and at the age of 8. And she was sexually assaulted by the black main character, which I already felt like, why'd you have to do that? You know what I'm saying? Like, why'd she have to be the black main character? The character didn't need to be sexually assaulted, period. But adding the black character just felt like, what are you doing? You know what I'm saying? And so it made me really uncomfortable. I don't know how people read past that point, because why? Then I read I Am Not Your Final Girl. If you guys know me, you know I'm a lover of horror movies. I'm a slasher girl enthusiast. I love slashers, so I bet poems written about slashers. Now, I'm not a poetry girl, so I will say that kind of partakes in why I DNF'd it. But I just thought it was corny. I'm not even gonna hold you up. I thought it was corny. First of all, I've seen a lot of like horror movies. Like I'm a horror movie enthusiast. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, you know. And so a lot of movies he talked about, I've never even heard of before. You know what I'm saying? And it's like, I'm not saying if you know what I'm saying, you know what I'm saying. Oh my gosh, what am I talking about? Quite literally, what am I saying? Anyways, so then the poems that I did know what she was talking about, they didn't fit the characters. Like, I'm not gonna lie. And it was just corny. I'm sorry. So I just DNF'd it. Then I read Takedown, and this one is by a black author. This one, it has such a good premise. It is about this girl who wakes up married in Vegas. I love that trope. Like back in my Wattpad days, I love the married in Vegas trope. Like it eats. One day when I write a romance, maybe I'll write that trope. And so she wakes up in Vegas and she's married to this guy. It's kind of like the guy of her dreams almost, but she keeps denying that she's married. And they go back home and she just doesn't want to like admit that like they're married, and she has to like live with him because her mom is coming home and she doesn't really get along with her mom, so like do this fake dating thing. I did nothing because the main character was shitty. Like she complained a lot. First of all, she was the one who convinced him to get married, but for some reason, which we'll probably find out later on in the book, she doesn't want to like admit that. And like it just was really annoying because how do you forget? And then she was calling him like all like creepy, and like she was really degrading him a lot and like really talking bad about him, and she was just annoying. Like the main guy did not deserve her. Like I honestly don't see why he was so obsessed with her, because she was just really shitty. And then lastly, I DNF'd Groupie, which this one hurt me because CM Stitch is my favorite. She writes reverse harems, which is my favorite genre, and she writes my favorites of them, like Secret Girl and Boys of Burberry Prep. I actually love. And then there's a book coming out. I think it should be out today actually. There's a book coming out like that takes both of those stories and puts them into one. But yeah, Groupie, I was reading this and it's basically about this girl and her father died, and she somehow gets into this concert and she ends up like messing with all the guys, and like they think she's a groupie. And I just had to DNF this because she was too sad for me. Like they was banging and she was over here talking about some, my dad died a year ago, my dad died today. And I'm like, okay girl, okay girl, okay girl, like this is not the time. Like literally they had just got done and she was like, so tell me about like your dead mom. Like every page, I don't think the CM Stitch like knew how to write trauma in this book, because like every page the main character was thinking about her dead dad, and I'm just like, okay girl, like let's get it together, please, let's get it together. So now let's get into it. Now on to the books that I read. So nonfiction. The first nonfiction book I read is My Friend Anna. I am obsessed with Anna. If you've never seen the Netflix TV show, what is it called? Surviving Anna? What is it called? Something. It's basically about this girl, and she convinced people that she was in Harris in New York, and she scammed a bunch of people out of their money. And honestly, I'm not mad at her. I stand her. Like, it's eat the rich until somebody actually does eat the rich, and then all of a sudden they're a villain. No, she's a queen. I don't understand why everyone's so mad that she scammed all these rich people, because half the people who are mad are not rich. So I just think that if you're dumb enough to be scammed by her, that's your own fault. But yeah, I did not rate this book, and I actually don't like this book because this entire book is just trying to paint Anna as like such a huge villain. And like, okay, even if I take out me studying her as a sense, like she is a villain to other people, but it was meant to make herself look even more like a victim. And it got to the point where she looked pathetic. Like she was just like, yeah, Anna's like, Anna kept scamming her out of her money. I don't feel bad for you, you're dumb. And then the main girl's a privileged white girl. She even said that she was privileged in the book. So it's like, I just don't feel bad for you, to be honest. So then I read Sex Cult Nun, and I gave this book 5 out of 5 stars. I absolutely love this book. This book is about this, I almost said the main character. This book is quite literally a non-fiction book. It's about a real person. This book is about, I forget her name actually. Oh, it's about Faith Jones, and she is in the Children of God cult. And this is a very popular cult, and this cult is being known for basically like sex and like children having sex at a young age and all these things. And it's basically her growing up in a cult. It's marketed as like her growing up and getting out of the cult, but she doesn't really get out of the cult until 75% in. But I absolutely love this book, like learning about the cult and how her life was. And she's the grandchild, like the direct grandchild of the man who started the cult. And I just think that cults are very interesting, and how people get into cults, and how people like trick other people into getting into cults, and how people it's usually by the Bible, and how people twist the Bible to their own sense, and like to get other people to follow that sense as well. So I love this book. And then there's a scene in this book where the mom teaches her a magic trick, and when I tell you my jaw was on the ground, there's just like a bunch of things in this book that's just like, whoa, oh my god, you know. And so I Absolutely love this book. So then I read a book called Get Rich or Lie Trying, and it's basically about social media, and it's just like a social media commentary. They talk about Fashion Nova, Instagram models, talks about like the Black Lives Matter movie, which that one I liked the book up until that one. I gave the book 3 stars. So I feel like the author put too much of his own opinions into the book, and it kind of like deterred me from liking it. But hey, you will not see me buying Fashion Nova any longer, because one of the ladies, first of all, they treat their workers like shit. I learned, which I knew they learned, but it's like actually reading how they treat their workers just shed a new light for me. They treat their workers like shit, and then they were saying like, yeah, we work in this warehouse with rats in the ceilings, your clothes probably have rat pee on it. And I said, that's enough for me. That's enough for me. Yeah, the author talks about Black Lives Matter movement at the end, and like I just don't like how it went, especially because he's a British black guy. Like the author is black, but he's a British black guy, and I just don't like how that came, because it's like, you're not from America, so it's like you don't get how it feels to actually like witness this shit every day. Like you don't understand, like you're on the outside of it, so it's like I don't, you know what I'm saying? So it just made me really uncomfortable. I read Trick Mirror, which I gave 3 out of 5 stars. This is just a bunch of essays, once again, about social media. Now, I saw on TikTok, and this wasn't recommended by TikTok, but I saw on TikTok, somebody was like, yeah, this book absolutely changed the way that I thought. This book had nothing revolutionary in it. It's literally just a bunch of essays. Kind of boring, I might add, but some of the essays were good. Like in one of the essays, she talks about how she was on like this reality TV show that nobody's ever heard of, and how like that affected like one of the other girls because they were kind of mean to her, and how that affected her, and how shitty that is. And she also lived in Michigan. And yeah, it's kind of forgettable in my opinion. But it was still good. And I like the cover. So if you see me buy the book, mind your business, because the cover is really pretty. And then I read Cultish, which I gave 5 out of 5 stars, and this is just the language of fantasism. And this author uses language and talks about like, she uses language to talk about her books, and I find it really interesting. I'm going to be reading her book Word Slut at some point. And so this book, she talks about like cults and like how they trick people to like becoming a part of a cult, and how easy it is becoming a part of a cult, and how you are probably a part of a cult. It literally talks about, she talks about actual cults. She talks about MLMs. I keep wanting to say she talks about spin class. Who the fuck takes spin class unless you're like a rich white woman in the early 2000s? Whatever, she talks about something. I personally really like this book. There's a section where she talks about how she almost got sucked into Scientology, which if you don't know what Scientology is, it's like a modern day cult with like a bunch of celebrities in there. And so I thought that was really intriguing, especially because she knew the signs of being in a cult because her dad was in a cult, and her dad has taught her the signs. So when she got into like, when she went to like the Scientology building, she was like, oh shit girl. And then I read In Defense of Witches, The Legacy of Witch Hunts and Why Women Are on Trial. So this author basically takes like feminism and how it relates to the witch hunt, and how witch hunt is basically still going on today, and how women are basically treated the same way how witches were back in the day. And it is really good. And so this is translated, and she has other non-fiction books, and I hope they are translated soon, because I really want to read some of her other books. But if you want to hear more of my thoughts, I talk about this book a lot more and my recommending Sad Girls books, so if you want to know my opinion on that, definitely check that out. So then we get into literary fiction, which I read a lot of literary fiction this month. That genre, I started reading this genre, and I feel like I found my love for reading again. I never lost my love for reading, but I just feel like I found a new love for reading, and I found a new main genre to read, because usually when I'm tired of fantasy, I read a lot of romances, and I don't know, literary fiction is just so fun. So I read Station 11, and I gave this one 3 stars. This is basically about like a apocalypse that happens, and this group of people who are putting on a Shakespeare play. And I thought I would really like this book, but I didn't, because it doesn't really focus on apocalypse, which is fine, but I was just expecting that when I went into it, and I just thought it was like really boring. And also like these people are band together because they have this love for this one person, and he's like a celebrity. And I found the celebrity stories very interesting, but that was the only thing I found interesting. So yeah. Then I read Convenience Store Woman, and this one is about this woman who is essentially on the spectrum, and she works in a convenience store, and everyone in her life is just telling her like she needs to get a real job and she needs to get a husband and she needs to do this and she needs to do that, and she's really just satisfied with living in a convenience with working in a convenience store. So she ends up dating this guy who's essentially an incel, and it's just going through that and like her own thought process and how people put their beliefs on her. And it's also just about, you know, not being where you should be in life, and how everyone has like a different measurement of like where you should be, and being fine with where you are. And yeah, I really like this book, especially because, like, you know, when you're in your like 20s, I'm hitting my late 20s, guys. Oh my gosh. When you're in your like late 20s and like, you know, 30s and stuff like that, everyone has like an idea of like where you should be in life. And so it's really hard to navigate like life when like everybody has an opinion on where you should be and what you should be doing. And if you don't meet those standards, and you don't want to meet those standards, and you don't have any interest in meeting those standards, like how hard that is. And I really like this. If you want to hear more of my opinions on it, check out the Sad Girl recommendation, because I'll talk about it a lot more. I then read My Year of Rest and Relaxation, which I gave 5 out of 5 stars. I really love this book. At first I gave it 4 out of 4, but I could not stop thinking about it. This one is about this girl who is depressed, and she decides that she's going to spend a year, she's going to take a year off, and she's going to literally spend her year resting and relaxing. And she takes a bunch of pills to keep herself sleeping. I was in my year of relaxation era in July with my audiobooks. Like, I literally just in my room, like, listening to audiobooks and audiobooks and audiobooks, and just having so much fun listening to them. To be honest, that's how I read so many books this month. I know a lot of people don't like this because she's an unlikable main character. I personally liked her. I thought she was really funny, and she's really depressed, and I think it really touches on, you know, how she's like mean to her best friend. But like sometimes when you're depressed, like you are mean to people. Like, you know, people, they want you to be happy, and they have their own definition of happiness, and they want to force like you to also go out because they think that like going out will make you happy, or like, you know, they want to force these things on you because they think that like it'll help you be happy. And it's like you have to move on your own terms when you're depressed, and like it makes you a nasty person sometimes. Like sometimes you say mean things to make people leave you alone. But also this character was just unlikable, and I like that. If you want to hear more of my thoughts on this book, then definitely check out my Sad Girls recommendation. These next few books are from my Sad Girl recommendations, just because I needed to film that book, so like I wouldn't spend too much time talking about these books, so that I won't be sitting here forever. So then the next book I read is If I Had Your Face, and I gave this book 3 out of 5 stars. This is a translated book, and this one is just takes place in Korea, and it takes place in a apartment building. It's about 3 women who all live in the same apartment building in Korea, and just the competitiveness of being in Korea. And I thought this book was just fine. There wasn't any character that I really liked, and I find with literary fiction, like, you have to really love the main character in order to love literary fiction, because the genre is no plot, just vibes. And so if you want to hear more of my thoughts, Sad Girl recommendations. Then I read Milkfed, 3 out of 5 stars. This book was wild. This book is basically about this woman who has mommy issues, and her therapist tells her like, hey, you should take some time off texting your mom and talking to your mom, and, you know, give yourself some space. So she ends up becoming involved with this other girl. Yeah, it's just about like their romance. Now this book, it does have smut in it. I've never been more uncomfortable listening to smut, and that's just because of the descriptors that is used, like the way that this character describes things. At one point she describes the girl she's hooking up with as fishy, and I was like, huh? I enjoyed this book. I would have given it 4 stars, but the sex descriptions made me very uncomfortable. But I thought this book was hilarious. Like, this book was just wild. Like, the main character was just saying and thinking stuff, and I'm like, whoa, girl. Then I read this book called The New Me, and I gave it 3 out of 5 stars. Or did I give it 2 out of 5 stars? I feel like I gave it a lot lower, because this one is just about this main character, and it really doesn't, it doesn't have a plot. But I don't like the main character. I thought she was really pathetic. She was really insecure, and she was just really nasty. Like, I love unlikable main characters, but she was just, I'm not an insecure person, and she was just really insecure, and it's just something I couldn't relate to. Like, I don't compare myself to other people. It's something I've been working on for years, and I'm kind of out of that mindset now. So actually seeing it and listening to it in a book, I was kind of just like, ugh. You know what I'm saying? Then I read The Bell Jar, which I also gave 3 out of 5 stars. This book is just about this girl who is really depressed, and she lives in a hotel, and then she ends up going to, I forgot what it was called, but I thought this book was a little problematic. I'm not gonna lie. There's a scene, first of all, she's saying Negro all throughout this book. I'm like, damn, girl, are you Stephen King? I know what you're saying, like, you love Stephen King, you realize Stephen King, like, you don't really have any room to judge. Yeah, I know, but at least with Stephen King, like, I know what he thinks he's doing. Like, he thinks he's like, you know, if you make these characters, like, say the N-word, that shows that they're a villain and how bad they are. Whereas the main character in this book was saying Negro. And, like, it's just something about saying Negro, it just makes me really uncomfortable. My camera overheated and I forgot where I was, so I'm just gonna move on to the next book. So the next book I read was Acts of Desperation. This was a 5-star read for me, guys. This was like 5 out of 5 stars. It takes place in Ireland. It's about this woman who basically like wants to be in a relationship, and she gets into a relationship, and just like how toxic it is, and her getting out of that relationship and finding herself. And I really loved it. I love, like, I can just relate to like the toxic relationship, and like I love like how she got out of it. And there's like this little, it's not really a smut scene, and it did get a little toxic, but in the beginning the smut scene was giving, I'm not gonna lie. It's like at the end of the book, and I was eating it up, but I really liked how it ended, and it made me laugh and it made me feel things, and I just really enjoyed that. And then the next book I read was Animal, which I gave 3 out of 5 stars. This audiobook was narrated by Emma Roberts. I love her, and this was like the perfect book for her to narrate. And this one is just about this girl who is always dating married men, and finally it comes back to bite her in the ass. And I personally just thought that like the book was just too long. Like the main character was very much unlikable, and I loved that, but I just felt, I don't know, I just felt really bored by the story, honestly. And then I read Ghosts, which I was reading for a vlog, and I really liked this book. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. This book basically is about this woman who is turning 30, and her ex just broke up with her, and she starts online dating, and her dad has dementia, and her mom is acting really weird, and her life is just in shambles. And she ends up dating this guy online, and then he ghosts her, and then her ex-boyfriend invites her to his wedding, and she's like, I didn't really want to be married. And it's just her discovering herself, and it's like a coming of age story for 30-year-olds. And this book just helped me come across like so many realizations. Even though I want these things and they aren't coming to me when I want them, it doesn't mean I'll never get them. And I'm also a Virgo, so I have to learn that I don't need to plan out every aspect of my life. And then I read The Secret Lives of Church Ladies. I gave this one 3 out of 5 stars. This one tells a bunch of different stories about church ladies. This one is queer. It's by a black author, so all the characters are black, and I really had a lot of fun time. My favorite story was, I think it was Peach Cobbler, I think that's what it was called. And it's literally about this girl and how she grew up, like her mom was like dating like the preacher, and was secretly dating because he was married, so she was like having an affair with the teacher, and how she grew up like with that, her mom like neglecting her, and the neglect that she had from her mom. And then she ends up like going to tutor the preacher's son, and she ends up like kind of falling for him, but then realizing that he ain't shit. And I don't know, I just thought it was like the best story that was in there, and I kind of wish that it was a longer story, or like a short story of its own, because I really enjoyed it. Not to mention that I read The Idiot, which I gave 3 out of 5 stars. This book is about this, the description is basically the entire book, but this book is about this girl who, it takes place in 1985. She's going to college, she's going to Harvard, and this is when emails were first discovered. And so she is writing emails with this guy in her class, and they've never really met before, and he's basically leading her on. And then he ends up, she's Turkish and he's Hungarian, and he ends up like convincing her to go to Hungary for the summer, and nothing really comes out of it. I really like the main character, and it's very relatable in the sense that she's always overthinking it in her head. Sometimes she like, someone will say something and she wonders like why her classmates don't think the same way she does, and she's taking classes that don't really make sense or pertain to what she wants to study. And I did find the main character very relatable, but I just felt like it was too long. And then, I'm not even kidding, the last half was just useless. If you want to hear my more in-depth thoughts, check out the video where I talked about sad girl book recommendations. And then I read Never Let Me Go, which I read 5 out of 5 stars. I'm so mad because when I'm filming this, I already ordered the cover on Book Depository 2 weeks ago, and it's not here yet, but I ordered this really pretty paperback. I'll use the picture of the cover I was originally going to get. And Never Let Me Go is a dystopian book. It is about these people who grow up in this boarding school and they are raised a certain way, and then it follows them leaving the boarding school in their adult lives. And it also has a movie with Andrew Garfield, which I haven't watched but I will be watching. And so I picture the guy Tommy as Andrew Garfield, and it paid off. I really love the boarding school aspect, and I did know the spoiler going into the book or reading the book because I was looking up stuff. Like that was my own fault. But even though knowing the spoiler didn't really ruin the book for me, it would have definitely gave me a shock value, but it didn't ruin the story for me, and I really liked it. And I don't know, I thought it was interesting. It's not a dark academia, but if you are into academia and like dark, it's like dark-ish. It doesn't have any murders or secret society, but it definitely is dark-ish. You definitely should check it out. And now moving into fantasy, I got a new all-time favorite, and that is Hinge. I absolutely love this book. It is, I would say it's not really fantasy, but I didn't know where to categorize it. A lot of these books aren't really fantasy, but I didn't know where to categorize them, so I'll put them in fantasy. This book is about this girl who is she's a henchman, and she is on this mission, and she basically she breaks her leg, or the superhero breaks her leg, and nobody's really accommodating for it. They're all just kind of like gaslighting her, like, no, the superhero didn't do this to you, like, we don't believe you, and all this stuff. And she's like, okay, bet. So she ends up working with like this villain to like take down the superhero. And like, I just love a good revenge story. I love superheroes, so if you like Marvel, DC, superheroes period, definitely check this out. I loved it. And there's like this romance that is going on between like the main character and the villain, and it just gave, oh my, it gave for the second book. Like, I need them to be together. There were some scenes in this book. I read Before the Coffee Gets Cold, which I gave 3 out of 5 stars. This isn't really a fantasy, but I didn't know where else to put it. And this one is about this coffee shop where you can go into there and you basically can travel back in time, but it has a large set of rules. Well, not like a large set of rules, but honestly, when I listened to the rules, I was like, there's really no point. You can't travel back if the person hasn't visited the coffee shop, so you can only travel back in the coffee shop. It doesn't really change the future or the past or the present. It doesn't really change the past or anything like that. So if you're trying to go back and make up a mistake, it really doesn't mean anything. And there's like a few more other rules, I forgot, but I thought the stories were just okay. Honestly, I kind of thought it was pointless, because like the rules are like, it doesn't change the past. Like, what would you time travel for then? You know, what would you go back into the past for then if you can't really change it? Because that's like usually when people will go back in time, it's to change something. Or I would see like to see someone else that you like loved in your life. Like, I definitely could see that, but like there's really no other reasons, so I thought it was kind of pointless. Okay, so then I read Diary of Blood, which I gave 5 out of 5 stars. I was not expecting to like this, guys. Like, I know this was such a hype book, and I pretty much usually I love hype books. Like, I'm not one of those people who has to like who like hates hype books or anything like that. I have to read like undiscovered gems or anything like that. No. But I just did not think I was gonna like this book going in. This book is about this girl who's in this poly relationship, and she is dating Dracula, and this book follows her writing letters to Dracula, and you're basically coming upon like what happens in that poly relationship, and it's like very toxic, and I loved it. And Alexei, oh my god, I loved him. I loved him so much that I had to go and find the newsletter that she wrote. That was a bonus story, and that was called An Encore of Roses, which was literally just smuts, and I gave it 5 out of 5 stars because it gave. You guys know I love poly relationships. I love poly. I stan poly. I'm a poly girl, so any poly stories I can read, I love. But I guess because this book was so hyped, I was a little worried about it, because a lot of people don't really appreciate poly, or they don't really like a lot of poly, and so when it's hyped, I'm kind of just scared. Like, you know, I heard it was like toxic, and I was just really scared of like how this like was gonna go for people who love poly. But it's actually went really well. I loved it. I love Alexei. I love what the hell is her name, Magdalena. I love the main character. This book is getting a new like hardcover, and I can't wait to, because this cover is shiny as fuck. I can't wait to get the new hardcover. Like, I'm absolutely obsessed with this book. I honestly read so many 5-star reads this month, like so many new all-time favorites. Like, this month was like my best month I've had like all year. And then I read a bunch of thrillers. So I read My Sister's a Serial Killer, which I gave 4 out of 5 stars. This, what the title suggests, it is about this girl and her sister is a serial killer, and I really liked this book. The the sister who's the serial killer is unhinged. She's like a social media influencer. She's really pretty, everyone loves her. Like even the main character's mom kind of prefers her over the girl, and like she's just killing all these guys, and the main character's always helping her out with the killings, until there's this one guy that she's interested in that her sister is probably gonna kill, and she keeps trying to warn the man, and the man is like, nah, you're just jealous. And like it's just so interesting to me, like the sibling dynamic. Not really a thriller. I think it's really only a thriller because she's a serial killer, but it's not really a thriller. It's more of a literary fiction in my opinion, but I had a lot of fun regardless. So then I read The Hunting Wives. I gave this 3 out of 5 stars. This book is about this woman who moves to Texas, and she ends up getting involved with these other wives, and they shoot guns on like Friday nights, and she becomes obsessed with like the leader of it. And I just thought this book was okay. Like I really love thrillers that have like a bunch of twists and like are really shocking and surprising and have like a bunch of drama, and like this thriller just wasn't that. So all in all, I thought it was okay. Definitely was very erotic, honey. It was a lot of erotic things going on between these wives now, and I ate that up. I loved it, and I did like the ending. It just wasn't very like shocking for me. I want a twist that's like a twist. Like I want something that like has me like, oh my god, like I want something like gasping, and like thrillers don't really give that. So then I read For Better or Worse, which I gave 2 out of 5 stars. And I'm so sorry if Haley's watching this, because I wanted to love it so bad. It's about this husband and his wife, and it follows their son. Well, it doesn't follow their son, but they have the son, and at his school, his principal has been exposed for touching the boys in the school, and they were actually friends with that principal. And so the mom ends up, you know, finding out some devastating news, and things happen. And so now, no offense to Haley, but she did market this as like a twist that happens in like the first 50%, but to me it wasn't really a twist because I saw it coming, you know. Like it wasn't really a twist to me. It was just like, oh, like, you know, it's like a plot point. It wasn't really a twist in my opinion. So like I saw that coming, and then like the ending was like okay, and it switches between the husband and the wife's perspective, and the husband's perspective was more interesting than the wife, and the husband was like cheating on the wife. And okay, I really got to get, okay, now I'm gonna have to get into spoilers, so you know, when the cover disappears, you can just skip to the next book if you don't want to know spoilers. So basically what happens in this book is she goes to like kill the principal, and homegirl doesn't even get away with that. Like she does not get away with that. And then at the end of the fucking book, she decides, so he has an ex-wife, and she finds out that his ex-wife knew about the boy thing. So then the girl, the wife, the main character, she's basically in the end going to go kill the principal's ex-wife. You didn't even get away with his murder. And then I read The Good Lie, which I also gave 3 out of 5 stars. So it is about this woman who is a therapist, and it follows a man who is a defense attorney. I don't know, law. And so it follows a serial killer who has had 6 victims, and the 6th victim he lets go. One of the victims was the son of the attorney, and so when the 6th victim is let go, he ends up saying it was this teacher at the school, but the defense attorney does not believe that, and so he ends up defending the man. And I'm pretty sure it's not a defense attorney, but just roll with me here. Don't even correct me in the messages. I don't care. Let's just keep going. So so the therapist, she's a therapist for serial killers, and the defense attorney end up working together, and it's like a little romance between them. I thought it was okay. I clocked both of the plot twists low-key. I didn't clock them. Like, I'm not gonna like be like, oh yeah, I got it. I didn't get it fully, but I kind of got both of them. So it wasn't really thrilling for me. I just want a thriller that's gonna shake me. Like, I just want something that's just gonna like just get me, you know. And I read Behind Closed Doors, which I gave 3 out of 5 stars. If you don't know what this one is, a very popular thriller. It's about a woman who ends up marrying this man, and he ends up being like really sick and twisted and abusive, and it's how she gets out of that marriage. And so I thought it was okay. I grew up in an abusive household. I grew up in the same situation, not like me, but like I've witnessed the same situation with my own 2 eyes. Like, you meet a man and he's very like loving and caring, and then, you know, you marry him and he ends up being the worst fucking man on earth. Like, it happens all the time. And so I witnessed it myself. But this one was just unrealistic. Like, he was doing too much, and at a certain point, I was liking it at first, but at a certain point I was like, no, you're doing too much, and I found it like very boring. So the twist wasn't even a twist. I need twists, people. And so then I read 2 Lucinda Berry books. The Best of Friends, I gave this one 4 out of 5 stars. This one is about these three friends and they have sons, and so their sons are also best friends. And the one night there's a gunshot that goes off, and well, two gunshots that go off, and one is left dead and the other is left in a coma, and then the other one isn't speaking. So it kind of just starts an uproar in like their friendship. And this book wasn't really twisty either, because it's only a certain, I don't like those thrillers where it's like only like a certain amount of options here, and like it ends up actually being one of the options instead of an outside party, and it's kind of just like wasn't really shocking, wasn't really twisty, you know what I'm saying. And then I read When She Returned. Now this one I gave 4.5 out of 5 stars. Oh, I also like Lucinda Berry because I just feel like it had a lot of drama, and I love the drama. And so I really like the way that she writes in general. Like, the story hooked me in from the beginning. Even with When She Returns, like when I started reading the book, I just was not interested in it, and then I was immediately hooked. And When She Returned is about this woman who disappeared a few years ago. I think it was like 11 years ago, and she ends up coming back with a baby. She was basically taken by a cult, and like that's in the description. And I read a lot of cult books this month, and so it's basically just following like what happened with her, how she ended up in this cult, and some things that happened. And when I tell you that this was a twist, honey, this was a twist. I did not see, it wasn't really a twist either. And what this twist, because it wasn't really a twist, was better than any of the other twists I read this month. Like, it really ate down. Like, I was like shook, I was like gasping, I was like, oh. And it wasn't even really a twist for her. I kind of wish that it was, but I feel like the author was like, whatever. And Lucinda Berry is a child psychologist, so I think that's why I like the way she writes a lot. And I'm gonna try to read at least 2 or 3 more of her books in August. Anyways, so then I read horror, and I read The Need, and this one is just about this wife who thinks there's an intruder in the house, but she also thinks that she is imagining things. And it is like sci-fi, and it basically it focuses on motherhood, and it just wasn't really that interesting in my opinion. I didn't really care about it, and the sci-fi aspect of it was good, but it didn't really focus on that all too much. It focused more on motherhood, and I'm not really a mom. I do want to be a mom someday, but I'm not really a mom, so I kind of just didn't relate. And then the kid screaming in the audiobook just was enough for me. Then I read This Post Has Been Removed, which I gave 2 stars. Oh my god, it sucked. So this one is basically about these people who worked to remove posts from like Facebook and things like that, and how it damages them over time. And it just wasn't giving. It was very boring. The plot line wasn't it, and it used a lot of foul language, which I understand was to show how like this affects their brain and how they talk and things like that. But I just felt that I didn't care. Like, I just feel like they shouldn't have been dropping the F slur the way that they were. I don't care what reason was it. And the way the book ended, it literally felt like the author got up and walked away. Like, she was like da 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 da, and then, oh, my food is ready, and then came back and was like, damn, I was doing something. Like, it literally ended. Like, it didn't even end. It didn't come to a complete stop. It's like she stopped at a stop sign and was like, I'm gonna just park here instead of parking at my house. You know what I'm saying? Lastly, I read The Last House on Needless Street. If you want to hear like a more in-depth thoughts, I do have a live show that I'm talking about it. It's actually funny because my live show is actually in 30 minutes. And yeah. So basically talking about this before the live show. But I gave this book, at first I gave it 1 star. But then I sat on it and I gave it 3 stars. So this one, people say not to like read the description of the book, but honestly it doesn't spoil anything. So it is about this teenage girl, and this cat who all live in this house on the street. And then it follows another girl named Dee whose sister went missing a few years ago, and she's looking into why her sister went missing. I'm not going to go too much into the book because I do talk about this in my live stream. If you want to know like my thoughts, my spoiler thoughts, I talk about it within like the first 15 minutes of the live stream, and the rest is just literally talking about anything else and planning for the next month. So I definitely recommend checking that out. Now we get into the last section of the month, which is romance. So and I haven't read a lot of romance, which for me, y'all know that's new because I be reading romance all month long. So the first romance book I have to talk about is Magnolia Parks. Lachlan from Lachlan's Library, or Locke's Library, she was talking about this book on Instagram, and I didn't know what it was. I'm thinking it's like some fantasy book or some like anime book just by the cover. And so I just happened to be watching her review because I'm like, okay, what is this book about? Like, this girl's always talked about it. So I went to go watch her review, and it's actually a romance book, and it's basically like Gossip Girl but set in London. And the main character is biracial, even though it's not really like, it's mentioned a little bit but not a lot. But listen, I'll take that and run with it. And so I love that. I'm sorry, but I ate it up. And it's literally just a toxic relationship between these two people and their childhood friends and lovers, and it follows their friend group as well. And it was such a well-written story. Like, characters, I feel like they're so like realistic, and like the drama of it all. Now I will say the book was like really repetitive, which is why I gave it 4 stars, because I feel like it was repeating the same things over and over again. And it was some things like the way that the author wrote that I found kind of confusing. Like, I hated how like she would introduce a character and then she would be like, yeah, this is Christian Hermes, but you know who he is. And like, actually I don't know who he is, so why are you saying you know who he is? Like, I don't know, something about that was giving corny, but I was eating it up, honey. Like, it has like a little bit of fake dating in there, and it was just really good. Like, it was really entertaining. Like, these are all like super rich kids. Like, think of Super Rich Kids by Frank Ocean. That is the what this book is about. I created a playlist for this book. If you want to listen to it, I'll link it, or you can just DM me and I'll send it to you. And then I read All the Lies, which is by Rena King, which I gave 2 stars. I attempted to read a bunch of Rena King books, but I just DNF'd them. I DNF'd so many that I didn't even want to count them as like my DNFs, and like, I didn't even want to DNF this book either. And I was really liking it up until a certain point. Well, actually, I don't know. So yeah, I don't think that Rena King is really for me anymore, which sucks because I do really like her book. I am going to be reading her book Malice of Gods though. So All of the Stars is basically about this girl loses her memory, and she ends up living with this guy who clearly hates her, and she has like these friends, and she's like a popular girl, but she doesn't remember any of this stuff. And I just hate the amnesia trope. Like, and I feel like it was really underused in this plotline, but I hate the amnesia trope. And like, there's something going on. Like, the guy hates her for a reason. Like, he's trying to like keep her held. Like, he's trying to like, I don't know, it's just like he has like some type of animosity towards her for some reason. You don't figure out why in this book either. And listen, I didn't give a fuck enough to read the second book, so I'm just not gonna know why. I don't care. I hope it's good for it to be 2 whole book plots. And then the last book I read is Romancing Mr. Bridgeton, and I gave this 4 out of 5 stars because I've already read the first 2 books. Romancing Mr. Bridgeton I love Penelope. Everyone hates her, and I think that if you hate Penelope, you're just fat phobic because she has no flaws. Like, yeah, she's an unlikable main character, but if you like unlikable main characters and you don't like Penelope, you know what you are, and it's a hater. Yeah, this book definitely gave. And like, oh my gosh, what is the brother's name in this book? Whatever, Colin. He gave, like, he was like, I love like a nice funny guy, and like that's what he was. But in this book, he like gave, like, he was snatching her ass up, and like he was actually snatching her ass up. Like, there's this one point where she does something, he grabs her by the wrist and he's like snatching her up, and I was like, oh my god, this is like, oh my god, like, it ate. And just like, he was just such a completely different person in his book. Like, the way he is towards Penelope is just like so, it's everything. I love the guys in the Bridgeton romance. Like, I know it's a little bit of toxicity. Like, people call it toxic, I call it being in love. Okay, so it's a little bit toxic. It's a little bit toxic, yeah, but like, I love the jealousy trope, I love the possessive trope, and I love a man who knows how to handle his woman. Okay, because she needs to be snatched up a few times, and the smut it gave. And like, I just can't wait for Penelope's like season. Okay, so I just realized that I forgot 2 books to talk about, and one of them was like one of my favorite books of the month. So the first book I'm going to be talking about is Good Rich People, and this book is about these people who are like rich, like super snobby rich, and it's a thriller. And basically they have these tenants, and they set up these tenants to like basically like embarrass them or like ruin their lives. I'm not gonna say embarrass, they're trying to ruin these people's lives, and they're just like super rich, and nothing really touches them. And it's a girl who's married into the family, so she has a lot to prove to them. And there's another girl who becomes a tenant, and she has like secrets of her own. And I don't want to say too much because I don't want to spoil it, but if you like rich people thrillers, I do think that you'll like this one. It's not very twisty, so if you like thrillers with twists, I would say probably don't. But if you just like thrillers that just keep you on your toes and keep you what's gonna happen next, I do recommend this book. I gave it 3 stars just because when I read thrillers, I read for twists, and like, yeah, I like drama and things like that, but I want like twists. I want something that has me gasping. I want something that like will have me like shook and just blow my mind. But like, yet no thriller has yet to do that. Like, I don't know why. Like, no, like I do have thrillers that like do have me shook, but like I cannot think of any thriller that just like blew my mind, and just, except like The Good Sister by Sally Hawthorne, that one had me shook. Okay, and so like I haven't really read any thrillers that really just had me like, oh my god, like this is so crazy and this is so amazing. Like, they don't really be thrilling, you know what I'm saying? The thrillers don't be thrilling. So yeah. And then the last book that I want to talk about is Woman Eating. This book is about this woman who is half vampire, half human, and she also is like half Asian, half white. So she's dealing with like these, like wanting to eat human food but being a vampire, and her mom can't really help her anymore, so she has to find this food on her own. And I really love this because as a connoisseur of food and lover of vampires, this book really spoke to me. Like, I love the descriptions of food and just her going out to get food, even though she knows that she cannot satisfy her love and her need for food, and like just talking about her like being a vampire at the same time. It's more so like a literary fiction, so it's not gonna be like, you know, your typical like vampire like love story, but I love vampires any way that I can get them, so I definitely ate this book up, no pun intended. I do highly recommend this book if you are a literary fiction girly. But okay, now I'm actually gonna end the video for real. So yeah, that is it for this video. Check out my Patreon, like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in my next video.